Okay, so welcome back to another session of consumer or the overview of consumer behavior. So in this session, we are looking at the models of consumer purchase behavior. So by the end of this session, I expect that students will be able to explain the consumer behavior making process or the consumer decision making process, sorry. And again, identify the common example of the response hierarchy models. Describe the intervening factors involved in the stimulus response models of consumer behavior. Discuss the different kinds of personal value, or personal variable model, and again describe the simplified version of the Howard and Set models of consumer behavior. Now, one of the models of consumer behavior, as I talked about it in the first session, has to do with the consumer decision making process as a model. And this gave us the 5 stages of the consumer decision making. And with this model, the model is saying that every consumer go through a series of stages in an attempt of buying a particular product, goods, services, time, idea, or anything that we can talk of as far as consumption is concerned. And they are of the view that the first process that the consumer will go through has to do with the recognition of need or the problem identification, in other words. So here, the consumer, before buying something, first of all, there should be a reason, there should be a need, there should be a problem that you would want to satisfy, and that will call for your decision to make, that will call for your decision to buy something. That is the recognition of need. And after knowing what you want to buy, or after recognizing your need, the first thing is to gather information. That is information gathering or information search. So you have to search for information. So now if you want to buy an iPhone, you would want to know a lot about what people are saying pertaining to the type of iPhone you want to buy. And in an attempt, you may want to do what you call reviews, customer reviews, or consumers reviews. That is where people go to what do you call it? They visit. Okay, so that is information search. Now, after getting or gathering information, you would want to evaluate. So now you have a lot of options on your table. So it is up to you to decide which of the options you would want to opt for. So therefore, you need to evaluate the various options that you have so that you can know which of the option is best based on whatever you want to purchase. And after evaluation of alternatives, then you do what you call the purchase decision. So therefore, here you are going to decide that now this is what I want to buy and this is what I'm buying and all that. So this is the stage where you actually visit a particular outlet. So normally after making the decision and evaluating and all that, this is where people actually take their baskets or they move to a particular shop and say, I'm buying this, I'm buying that, and all sorts of things. So that is the purchase decision. And after that, the last stage is what you call the post-purchase evaluation. The post-purchase. So here you have purchased the thing already, but you want to evaluate the satisfaction level of whatever you bought. So you have to do what we call post-purchase evaluation. So that's trying to know whether whatever you bought actually delivered or gave you the satisfaction or actually has done what you expected to do with it. So this is the point. Sometimes you have issue about cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance basically talks about the discomfort or the feeling that people have as a result of buying something. So sometimes people becomes uncomfortable because of the decision that they've made to buy a particular thing. So therefore, they will be fighting with their mind. That is the cognitive dissonance. So the kind of what do you call it, discomfort or yes, that the person will go through after buying a particular. So here, normally people say, "Are they way I'm actually," or sorry for the local elderly, people will be saying that, hey, this thing that I have buy, am I sure that when I show it to my friends, they are not going to laugh at me? Sometimes looking at the price and all that. So you begin to fight with your mind before even people see what you have actually purchased. So under the post purchase, it's either the person will be satisfied, the person will be what okay, or the person will not be satisfied. So that is basically what this model is talking about. Now the next model has to do with the response hierarchy model. The response hierarchy model. And generally, we are saying that there are communications models which are thought to be a sequence of mental stage through which a buyer passes or on his or her journey towards a purchase. So the response hierarchy model basically talks about the kind of communication that actually goes on before a person makes the decision to buy a particular thing or a particular good or service. And here we have several examples that we can actually use to explain the response hierarchy model. So here it's talking about a hierarchy. So before somebody will buy something, there should be a hierarchy or a process. So it's a hierarchical something that the person will have to go through before making a decision. And one of the example of this response hierarchy model has to do with the AIDA model. So under the response hierarchy model, we have the AIDA model, the adoption, the dogma, and we have the Howard and the set model as well. All right. So let's place emphasis on the AIDA model. The AIDA model is saying that if a consumer wants to buy something, then before the person will make an attempt or the decision to buy something, there should be an awareness. So the AIDA is an abbreviation form of what? Awareness, interest, desire, and what? Action. So the person needs to be aware of whatever he or she is going to buy. And of course, you can't buy something when you are not aware of whatever you are going to buy. So there should be some form of awareness. You have information. So it has some linkage with the, 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 the decision making process model that we talked about. So there should be awareness. That is the information you have about the thing. And that awareness that you have will translate into an interest. So now you become curious about the product. You want to see it, you want to see it, you want to have a feel of it, you want to touch it. So you have heard about Samsung or let's say iPhone 14. You have not seen it before. You have information, you are aware of it that is in the market. But how much information do you have? So after getting the information, and that will lead you to trying to have the interest of getting to see the thing. And after getting the interest, we'll translate to a desire. Now I want that particular phone because probably you have seen it. Your interest is in it. Now I don't like the other ones. I like what do you call it, the iPhone 14. Now you desire, and then the desire would translate to an action of you buying it. So this is basically what you call it, a reduced form of the decision making process that we talked about. Okay. Now we have other one. We have the adoption, awareness. And so adoption model is talking about awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and adoption again to go back. So the adoption is saying that before a consumer can buy something, the person will need to be aware, will have the interest. After having the interest, you have to evaluate the various options. And after evaluating the various options, you have to try. And after trying, you decide to adopt it, to use that particular product. And these are various opinions by different scholars. It does not necessarily mean that every decision process will be, or every decision of consumer will go through the same thing. Probably there are certain products that you cannot try unless you buy it yourself. You can't try them. Unless of course you say you buy it in a smaller quantity or a smaller unit, then probably when you are satisfied, you can buy them in a larger quantity. Whether you like it or not, you have bought it. You get the point. And you have the dogma, which talks about the unawareness, the awareness, comprehension, conviction, and what? And the action. Then the set or the Howard and set model, which also talked about attention, comprehension, attitude, intention, and purchase. The third model is what you call the stimulus response model, which was developed by or propounded by Kotler and Armstrong in 1991. In developing their stimuli response model of consumer behavior in principles of what marketing. And they refer to the consumer mind before. They referred to the consumer's mind before, during and after purchase as the buyer's black what box. So this stimulus response model is saying that before a consumer will actually buy something, there are several stimulus or stimulus. That one will depends on the kind of school you attended, whether you mention it stimulus or stimuli or whatever. If you went to Krobo Girls or for but the bottom we chalk senior high, it will depends on how. So that is it. So the sector about the stimulus that will actually trigger a particular consumer in buying a particular product. So that is all that the stimulus response model is actually talking about, and which was of course developed by Kotler and Armstrong in 1991. So let's dive deep into what the model is talking about. So the model is saying that we have the marketing stimuli, and of course, we have the other stimuli. And all these stimuli will trigger to what we call the buyer black box. And the buyer black box or the consumer as a black box means that you don't know what the consumers are thinking. You cannot actually predict the intention of consumers. And that will actually translate to the buyer's characteristics, the buyer's decision process. So you might not know the kind of thinking that they're actually using in the decision making process. And under the marketing stimuli, we are looking at the product. So the kind of product will actually trigger. So what is the packaging of the product? Is the product looking attractive? So these are all stimulus or stimulus that actually influence the consumers what decision making. And the price, we know that of course consumers are price sensitive. In other words, they actually consider the price that is associated with whatever product they are actually buying. And therefore, if you are a business or a marketer, you need to be able to know the strategy in which you will deploy in order to price your product. Whether you go by the odd pricing method, the cost plus or whatever. So you have to place emphasis on that and know which one, because actually probably that can even give you a competitive advantage or edge. And then we have the place. So the place basically talks about where the person can get the goods or the service or the idea or the time that we have talked about. And the promotion. And even with regards to the place, that is why sometimes you will visit a particular outlet and even the ambience alone, the physical evidence, in other words, sometimes consumers buy certain things not because they want to buy. The ambience or the physical attraction or the physical appearance of the ambience will trigger them to enter, and when they enter, they eventually buy something. So you have to also know that all these stimuli actually affect the decision making of consumers. And we have the other stimuli talk about the economic, the technological, the political, the cultural, and what have you. And that one will translate to what you call the buyer black box and will lead to what the buyer's responses as to the product choice to buy, the brand choice, the dealer choice, the purchase timing, and even the purchase amount and all that. And then the last model that we will be talking about has to do with the personal value model. So the personal value model is talking about the the kind of value the consumer actually place emphasis on. So the kind of value that the consumer actually places. So the personal value of the consumer. So every consumer has his or her own value that actually trigger what to buy and what not to buy. So for example, if somebody is from the Muslim community, they have a different value. And even people within the Muslim community have different individualistic values that they actually go by. So what is the personal value of the consumer? And one of the personal value we will be talking about, you have the linear addictive model. So the linear addictive model is saying that it is based on the number of attributes a particular product or service has. So if a consumer would want to buy something, if the person is going by the linear addictive model, that consumer would want to know the number of attributes a particular product has, and will multiply it by the score each attribute is perceived to have. And by so doing, multiply the weight with which attribute is deemed to have. So that is how the linear addictive model works. So the person wants to know the various attributes of the product. And after knowing the various attributes, we'll have to attribute a score to each of the attributes. So, for example, you have different product that you want to buy. This, let's say you have cocoa, you have pineapple, you have this. You have to know the attributes of the various products. So what is the attribute? So if I take, for example, let me use laptops, for example. I have a Dell, I have a Lenovo, I have an HP laptop. You would want to know the attributes, or in other words, the characteristics of all of these products, or this, yes. And after that, you will want to multiply it by score. So for example, based on the attribute, laptop, Lenovo will have, let's say, 2 as a score, HP will have 3, and then the Dell will have, let's say, 4. So that is the score. Then you multiply it by a specific or by a given weight, and that will determine as to whether to go in for this one or not to go in for this particular one. And again, we have the threshold model as also another personal value model. So the threshold model was suggested by Smith and Taylor in 2004. So they propounded that particular ideology, and they are saying that most pitches have cut-off points or threshold beyond which consumers would not want to actually venture. So if a consumer would want to buy, the person have what do you call it, a prior knowledge to whatever he or she is going to buy. So if the person goes there and the thing is not like that, the person will not want to go to the threshold. So the person has already set a target or a threshold. So if I go and then the specification of the laptop is this, I will buy. But if I go and it falls below, I will not buy. So that is the threshold model. That is what the threshold model. So the person will have what a standard upon which he or she is going to measure whatever he or she wants to buy. And of course, the last one has to do with the trade-off. The trade-off, and the trade-off model is also was also by Smith and Taylor. And trade-off is saying it has to do a cut-off point. So customers generally have a wide range of choice, many with different types and amount of what attributes. So a trade-off occurs when the customer actually accepts a particular product that it is lacking in one attribute but strong in another. So for example, what the trade-off means is that if you want to buy something, probably you may not want or you may not get all the attributes that you want in that particular product, and therefore you will say that no, if I go and this is not there, I will dwell on this. If this is not there, unless of course all these elements are not there before I will decide not to buy. The trade-off is saying that there are certain elements that the consumer will forego, that if those things are not present, still he can dwell on the other characteristics or other elements to make the purchase decision. So that is basically the types of what models that we have. So in conclusion, this session has introduced us to the various models of what consumer behavior, and we have talked about the what do you call, the different kinds of models that we have, and in the individual models we have several models as well. So in an assessment, you are saying, students, I expect that probably you'll be able to answer some of these questions. You give an outline of how a consumer normally makes his or her purchase decision. So this is a task to you for you to go and find out. So go and look at how consumers, of course, you have discussed all these things. So did you understand? So it is because wallow walla. Those of you that you don't understand fancy, or they can what you consult your other colleagues, they will translate it for you. And then the second one has to do with what are the common examples of response hierarchy model. You get it? So you have talked about all those things. So make sure you visit the book and read deep. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So looking at the next session.